Okay, we have one public speaker, Alex Jacobson.
May I start?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, my name is Alex Jacobson. I'm a resident of Travis, Staten Island, and I wanted to talk mainly about, well, since I understand, only 2 minutes, mainly about the situation with S62 and /S92 route, which is its express version. There are quite a few problems on it, the way I see it. Main one, I would say, is that sometimes buses are not even showing up, especially in, like, early evening time, between like 4 or 6. Usually the bus, according to schedule, is supposed to run like once a half an hour. Sometimes it won't show up at all. Sometimes you would ask the driver from the next bus if he knows what happened to the previous bus. The answer would be like, the bus is missing. That's it. It's very frustrating because personally I very much depend on that route, and that's the only route that goes to my area. Another problem is with the ramp renovation. The ramp A and I believe now also ramp B on the ferry terminal for the Staten Island side ferry terminal for buses have been renovated since I think last October or September. There wasn't really much of a preparation, public notification campaign about it. One day you just arrive on your bus and boom, you see that it's parking at a different spot. You have to walk down and up to or from that ramp, and it's a little uncomfortable too. I understand now there's not much to be done about it. I have to wait for when the ramp renovation ends, and I understand it's scheduled to end this fall. But it's just, to note that sometimes I don't think MTA is doing its best job preparing public for changes. I understand that changes are meant for the better of the customers, but it would make sense, to prepare people better for temporary discomforts they might go through. If I may note a couple other things. By the way, with the Select service, first with the M15 in Manhattan, I understand now it's going to be also on Staten Island with the S78 route. It's nice to have new buses, it's nice to have improvements, but when you are getting confused where the regular bus stops, where the Select service stops, how you pay for it, this whole, new special paying, vending machines that give you out receipts. The situation with, I actually almost got fined the other day because I didn't figure that, the driver doesn't ask you for a receipt, he just lets you in. Then, at some point, you may be subject to being inspected by a special controller. And I had to scramble for my receipt. That's a little discomfort too, most definitely I did not mean to ride for a bus for free. I'm not one of the people that, jump in from through a back door, which by the way is another thing I wanted to address because I've seen it increasingly lately, and I think, I understand this is just a fantasy, but maybe something can be done to control that better too. That happens on just about every route. People just cheat, the rest of passengers keep quiet, nobody wants to be seen as a scab. But the problem is there. People just cheat. They come in through the back door. Maybe some kind of cameras could be installed or some kind of special turnstile for that problem. Because I think, MTA in the city might be losing millions of dollars because of that. To conclude, I wanted to suggest if MTA doesn't have a Facebook page yet, or some other sort of a social networking outlet, because I don't think I was able to find one on Facebook right now. Maybe you should start one, because it could help a lot as far as contact with the passenger community, democratize the feedback process. Yes. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you. The first part of your comments we're going to look into about the service.
We're going to take a look at the S6. On the S62, we have had some service disruptions in the PM. It's the end of the school year. We have a lot of issues with the buses prior to that. That's the time frame, so that should be corrected. The ramps, I believe there was signage, but we have dispatches on the ramps every afternoon, so I'm going to make sure that people do know where to go. We'll take care of
Not
that.
just where to go, but also the receipt thing.
The receipt is on the M15 SBS. That is something we have never done. We can take a look at that. The driver does not collect the receipts. The person keeps the receipt, and you have to show it. Right.
Okay.
But I've heard that issue from quite a few people on our Transit Riders Council as well. And perhaps if the machines where you purchase these the proof of payment receipts had a big sign that said "Hold your receipt" or "Provide receipt when requested," words to that effect, people would understand that they can't toss it away or something, or they shouldn't bury it in their pocket
Right.
or what.
I'll bring that back to them and take a look at doing that.
Okay. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. All in favor? Okay, there are no changes to the work plan this month. And just so you know, Darrell isn't here today, and Tom is replacing him, is representing him at the meeting today. Okay, so first, we would like to go to John Hine for the operations report,
Good morning.
page 10.
The performance highlights for the month of April and the past 12 months are on pages 10 and 11 of the committee book. For the month of April, combined bus MDBF was down 3% compared to April 2010 levels. AM pullouts were down by 0.3%, while PM pullouts were flat compared to April of 2010. Completed trips were up very slightly from April of 10. Over the 12-month period ending April of 11, combined MDBF fell by 6.6% compared to the prior 12-month period. AM and PM pullouts fell by less than 1% and completed trips by 1%. The percentage of buses currently over 12 years of age in New York City Transit now represents 30% of the total fleet, and 23% of the MTA bus fleet is over 12 years old also. That completes the operations report, and I'd like to introduce Steve Vidal for the safety report.
Good morning. Our comments on March's customer and employee safety performance is found on page 12. The 12-month rate for combined bus collisions per million miles traveled across the three bus units is 5.4% higher than it was for the prior 12-month period. Although the 12-month average rate is higher, March represents the second consecutive monthly improvement as the impact of the December and January winter storms has continued to be mitigated. Our preliminary review of April data shows this trend continues to move in that same direction. With regard to the rate of collision injuries, we continue to see incidences involving claimed collision injuries that are inconsistent with forensic evidence at the accident scene. One such incident occurred in March when a director from my bus safety unit responded to the notification of a collision that was in his immediate vicinity. Upon arrival at this collision scene, shortly thereafter, within minutes, one customer strongly voiced his concern and dismay about the conduct of the customers claiming injuries, pointing out that they had physically resituated themselves on the bus to support their making errant claims. 5 customers were eventually removed by EMS to local hospitals. 3 were treated and released, and 2 others left once they arrived at the scene without being treated. Despite meeting the criteria of 5 or more injuries, the Public Transportation Safety Board refused to take this case. We also wanted to point out that there was a notable monthly variance in Long Island bus performance. As a result, we have increased our in-service monitoring of operations where we believe the performance improvements can be attained. However, the 12-month rates for both customer accidents and customer accident injuries are continuing to move in positive directions on a regional bus basis since we addressed the issues last March. To sustain this momentum, we are maintaining the training initiatives and oversight controls that we developed and implemented as highlighted during our prior presentations to this committee. Finally, the 12-month rate for employee on-duty lost time accidents has moved to 1.6% worse as compared to the prior 12-month period. While Long Island Bus' negative monthly percentage variance is significant, it represents an actual increase of 4 employee claims of injury. This performance is counter to the positive monthly improvements seen at New York City Transit and MTA Bus Company. And our preliminary review of April and May data trends indicate the Long Island Bus has begun to improve in this area. That completes the safety report. I would now like to introduce Tom Charles for the paratransit report.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. The paratransit performance summary is on page 14. For the month of April 2011, accessorized paratransit ridership fell by 2.4% compared to April 2010 levels. Able ride ridership decreased by 12.9% from April 2010 levels. Over the 12-month period ending April 2011, there was a 1.4% increase in accessorized requests for service. Able ride experienced a 13.1% decline in requests for service over the same 12-month period. The year-to-date decline in Able ride reflects the elimination of non-ADA trips implemented mid-year 2010. Favorable no-show trends were seen in the month of April, as accessorized and Able ride passenger no-shows declined by 21.6% and 38.4% respectively. Finally, as requested by Chairperson Chevelle at last month's meeting, the following is an update of our test and evaluation of the broker for car service program. The broker network provides a significant amount of trips at a favorable cost, but we received and substantiated many complaints of affiliate drivers who did not address the scheduled times of service delivery and showed little concern for customer sensitivity. As a result, we did not increase the number of trips above the 2,000 assigned daily and directed the broker to enforce the orientation and training of affiliate personnel within the broker's network of car services. After meeting with the broker staff to review the outcomes of trip performs, we see a demonstrable reduction in the number of complaints and expect a continuing decline in the week ahead. This completes the paratransit report. Now, Tom Del Sol.
Good morning. We'll start with the fixed route ridership report on page 13 of the book.
Just wait 1 second. Of course, if anyone has any questions, just stop me.
Okay, for the month of April 2011, average weekday ridership fell at all three agencies when compared to April 2010, due in part to the school recess falling in the month of April this year. Long Island Bus average weekday ridership fell by 5% in April 2011 as compared to the prior April. MTA Bus fell by 6.4%, and New York City Transit Bus fell by 9% for the same period. Average weekend ridership, Long Island Bus was essentially flat, while MTA Bus fell by 4.2% in April as compared to last April, and New York City Transit Bus weekend ridership fell by 7% in April 2011. Express bus ridership on weekdays fell at New York City Transit and MTA Bus by 7.2% and 6.3% respectively in April. A look at the preliminary May data for ridership reflects decreases in average weekday ridership at all three agencies when compared to May 2010 levels. For May 2011, our average weekday bus ridership was down 5.1% in New York City Transit, down slightly by 0.9% in MTA Bus, and 2.1% in Long Island Bus for May. I'd like to move on page 15 to the revenue and expense budget report. Farebox revenues year-to-date through April 2011 were still down across the board when we compare it to the adopted budget. MTA Bus is 3.5% below the adopted budget. Long Island Bus is 2.5% worse, and New York City Transit Bus was 4.3% worse than budget through April. Overall, our farebox revenues are $15 million less than we expected in the budget through April of 2011. But despite lower revenues than budget, the year-to-date non-reimbursable expenses still reflect favorable variances for each of the three agencies. MTA Bus, Long Island Bus, and New York City Transit Bus are below their 2011 budget levels by $12.8 for MTA Bus, $4 million in Long Island Bus, and $45 million in New York City Transit Bus. Now, some of those underruns against budget are due to vacancies that have been held, paratransit economies which continue, and some of it is timing which will reverse itself, so there won't be the large amount of underruns that we just reported. That's it for the finance and ridership reports. And with regard to procurements, are there any questions?
Wait.
Sorry,
Sure.
Nancy, Tom, one quick comment. Given that the county, Nassau County, has announced it's in negotiations with a private operator, can I ask that each month for the rest of the year, since this is public information, that a copy of this be sent to the county executive's
Absolutely.
office and to the chosen contractor?
Yes, we've already started having the conversations with them on the whole gamut of the transition, and we'll be happy to provide. We could provide it by route too for them, so they could see the whole thing.
Thank you.
And furthermore, at what point in these meetings do we get an update on where the county stands in terms of this bid?
We could conceivably start next month. They haven't. I participated along with Robin in a conference call with Nassau County. Veolia was in Illinois for the call, and they're coming in this week for some FTA-related inspections. But their timetable appears to be second half of July to actually approve a contract for Veolia. They're working out the terms and conditions on a regular basis. We could have a preliminary update in July, but
No, I
then
think
in
starting
September
in the
really is
September.
when the action will really begin, because they'll be on the property full time.
Is that okay?
They're expected to have an approval by August 1st in Nassau County.
Okay, so starting in September.
Okay.
There are no procurements.
That's it. So norm for the service
We're not
changes.
spending any money.
Wait till July.
Good morning. There are two service changes included as information items in this month's agenda, both for MTA Bus. In addition to these service changes, the agenda also includes as information proposed September 2011 schedule changes of New York City Transit bus routes. The first MTA bus service change on page 48 of the agenda is for a very minor revision to the Q39 travel path in West Maspeth. The Q39 provides service between Ridgewood and Long Island City and runs through this area in West Maspeth. This revision, which affects both directions of service, is being made to accommodate changes in roadway operation being implemented by New York City DOT in September of 2011. The second MTA service change on page 53 of the agenda is for a change in the Q45, Q47, and Q49 bus routes in concert with a comprehensive NYC DOT study effort in Jackson Heights to improve overall mobility in the area. The Q45 currently operates between Glendale and Jackson Heights, and the Q47 currently operates between Jackson Heights and the Marine Air Terminal at LaGuardia Airport. These routes will be combined to create a single north-south route in western Queens between Glendale and LaGuardia Airport's Marine Air Terminal, providing north-south travel and reducing layovers in the congested intermodal facility at Jackson Heights. This new route will be labeled the Q47. In addition, as part of the associated NYC DOT effort to revise street operations to improve traffic flow, the travel path of the Q47 in Jackson Heights will be revised. The Q49, which operates between East Elmhurst and Jackson Heights, will also have a revision in Jackson Heights to accommodate these same street changes in operation. These revisions will be implemented in September 2011. The agenda on page 68 includes a total of 83 bus schedule changes on 56 New York City Transit Authority routes for implementation in September 2011. The bus changes represent both increases and decreases in service frequencies and/or running time modifications to meet loading guidelines. The net budget impact of the changes is $1 million annual savings. Do the committee members have any questions about the service or schedule changes? We'll be happy to entertain them.
I do. I have a lot of affection for the Q47, and I think it's actually an important line because it links LaGuardia and the Roosevelt Avenue train station. But my question, Norm, is does the merger of Q45 and Q47 affect the frequency of service from LaGuardia to Roosevelt Avenue?
No.
Thank you.
I have a lot of affection for the Q39.
I'm glad we have a lot of affection.
Yes, well, he's from Jackson Heights. I'm from Sunnyside, Woodside. So, the only change, real significant change for the past year is this moving of the bus stop. This was one bus stop, which is on 56th Drive and 58th Street. Correct? That's someone will have to be on a different street if you're going in the other direction.
Correct.
And again, I just when this one-way pair thing is done by DOT, I know that's why we're doing this. I just think we should put signs up at the bus stops directing people if they should happen to, well, I got off here, where do I get the bus to go the other way? It would be good to have a sign that tells people how do you get the bus in the other direction, because they could be confusing.
We will put signs, we will mount signs at the old bus stops, directing them to the new bus stops. Of course, the signs are generally made of some kind of paper. We'll do the best we can.
Yeah.
We do that routinely, and we will put signs up to do that.
What I meant, but even in cases where there are one-way pairs, and people sometimes look, the bus goes in this. Where does the bus go in the other direction? Often and we're seeing more and more of that because of the way DOT wants to run the city. So anyway, is this a last question? Is this a pilot by DOT?
I can't
We don't
answer for
know?
DOT.
Okay.
To my knowledge, no.
All right. Well,
Pat, in answer to your other question, the frequencies are staying the same because these two routes happen to be coincident in their terminals, and their frequencies matched very well. So merging them together was more of a natural and an efficient way of doing things. So, no, we're not reducing the frequency at all. We're moving. We're not eliminating. We're relocating it because the street pattern changed.
Okay, Jeff?
I don't want to repeat myself, but I know there's some people on the committee and on the MTA bus that weren't at the last meeting. One of the things, and it's just a comment, that I'm trying to get and working with New York City Transit and with Peter is a whole analysis of all the service cuts and its impact from a year ago. I understand that we give service guidelines and the agencies are allowed to make changes to those service guidelines within them, but I think it's important for us to see a full analysis of the impact of all the bus cuts and changes that were made and adopted by the board, because it sometimes puts us in a bad position to make changes by the board and then changes get made after the fact, and we should be seeing that information as well. So it's nothing more than just looking forward to it. They've been
Sure,
working real hard to get that.
the MTA bus changes were very small compared to the magnitude of the Transit Authority changes, but we can certainly add on to the transit report, follow their format, and do exactly the same thing, sure.
Okay. Andrew?
As you probably can guess, I have a great deal of affection for all the buses listed here.
I know you do, Andrew.
Yeah.
I do, too.
And so I would, maybe I'm coming at this from a different place than Commissioner Kay, but until, a full analysis had been done of the June 27th service cuts, I don't think we should be making any change until we see how many of these ridership losses are due to the service cuts or ridership gains are due to some other thing before we just tinker all around and make more people angry. So Jeff and I agree, but probably for different reasons.
Duly noted.
Okay. The last part of the meeting, I'm sorry for those that have already heard the storm report today, but you're going to hear it again. And now, who's going to do the first half?
We're going to have Craig Cipriano speak first on the fixed route side of the report, and then Steve Lopiano will finish with the paratransit portion.
Thank you. The December 2010 blizzard was one that the region had not experienced in quite some time. In addition to its speed and ferocity, the volatility of the forecast in the days leading up to the storm brought about operational challenges and highlighted weaknesses in our storm response that had not been exposed during the many prior winter storms buses successfully managed. The heavy snowfall not only affected buses and paratransit vehicles, but also had adverse effects on other MTA-provided services. Buses were getting stuck in snowbanks and behind abandoned vehicles left in the middle of roadways. As these conditions continued to get worse, they hindered our snow crew efforts and ultimately led to severe service disruptions. On the morning after the blizzard, bus service was severely curtailed as buses remained stuck in snow and streets remained unpassable. Aiding the restoration effort, buses reached out and received heavy snow fighting equipment from our sister agencies, and buses personnel continued to work 12-plus hour shifts. It was not until December 30th that all service were restored, and not until January 2nd until the entire system was restored to regular route. Immediately following the storm, buses undertook an internal review of our storm performance to identify issues and took immediate action to mitigate these weaknesses. The recommendations that came from our internal review were immediately implemented and proven to be successful during the ensuing winter storms of 2011. Some of these immediate actions are shared later in this presentation. Shortly thereafter, the MTA led an in-depth, comprehensive review of the entire agency, as well as outreach to transit agencies around the world to gather information and best practices on this topic. As a result of these two phases, we issued a storm report that was released today, which the committee members all received at the start of this meeting and is available on the MTA website.
Thank you.
The MTA review looked at our storm preparation and response and led to a series of recommendations that are grouped in 4 areas: operations, customer communication, staffing, and equipment, and provided a corporate perspective that allowed agencies to leverage the experience and expertise of other MTA entities and peer groups. Both our internal and MTA reviews found that many of the existing winter operation procedures proved to be effective to mitigate the effects of the blizzard. However, issues were identified. The first three improvements to be immediately implemented were the creation of a situation room staffed by senior leadership and equipped to provide leadership up-to-date vital information necessary to make critical service decisions. The identification of a customer advocate in the situation room with the primary responsibility to ensure that customers and buses employees alike have a loud and strong voice during these times. And we modified and improved the operational robustness of the bus radio system. In addition to the already implemented actions, we are looking forward and actively pursuing a number of initiatives to strengthen our bus service delivery and service management efforts. We are currently putting the finishing touches on our 2011-2012 Winter Operations Manual, which will include prospective storm alerts. We are continuing deployment of bus time, real-time information, which will not only enhance our customer communications, but our service management capabilities. And we are reviewing and improving our driver training curriculum with a specific emphasis on winter driving practices. I would now like to turn this over to Steve Lopiano to talk about paratransit operations.
Thank you.
Okay. Paratransit service was equally problematic during the December storm. Some of the things that we did right, we were able to mobilize our command center and operate it effectively during the duration of the storm. We also have our vehicles equipped with 100% equipped with an automatic vehicle location system, so we were able to know where our vehicles were, where they were stuck, where they weren't moving, and we also have the ability to send messages back and forth between those vehicles to make sure that any customers that were on board, any issues that they may have could be communicated back to us. And also, we were able to alert our customers, not way before, but certainly before the storm actually became very disruptive, that travel conditions were going to be very adverse and that they might want to look at canceling or rescheduling their trip to a time when the weather conditions were better off. And as a result, we were able to cancel a bunch of the trips that were scheduled for that day to bring it down to about a fifth of what the normal travel requirement is. Some of the issues that we had with the storm was the inability to set an alert level independent of buses. Historically, we rely on the bus command center's alert system, and we followed that during the storm. As a result, we didn't take preemptive action to curtail service, and we wound up with customers that were stuck and vehicles that were stuck, and that created a lot of problems during the storm. And getting our customers unstuck from the vehicles was also very problematic. 911 that day was overwhelmed, so it was hard to get any assistance, as well as our own people couldn't get down the streets because most of them weren't plowed and there were vehicles blocking streets, so some of our customers were stuck for quite a bit of time. Some of the improvements that we have contemplated and that we've already implemented is we've decoupled from the bus command center, and we will now call our own alerts. Basically, we recognize that our service is very different from the bus system. Our customers are fragile. We have to take into account the pathway from the vehicle to the street for our customers. A lot of our service is on tertiary streets where we go into neighborhoods to pick up customers, and they're certainly not plowed as quickly as the main arteries. And the van that we use, although it's better than a sedan in snow service, it's not the equivalent of a bus. And they tend to get stuck more often. So if the buses were getting stuck, the vans were getting stuck as equally as quickly. We've also introduced a dashboard monitoring system to track stranded vehicles and customers, and notifications to OEM when we have a customer that's trapped on a vehicle, as well as trip cancellations, and this is going to be updated on a half-hourly basis. We've introduced one-day advance booking when we know there's a forecast of a storm that's going to happen, and what this does is, normally we have a 2-day window, and what this does is it allows us to materially reduce the amount of trips that we need to notify customers that will be canceled if we have to go that route due to further deterioration of conditions. And we've introduced protocols where we only use vans when there's snow service. We found out that the sedans work terribly, and we have a procurement in place that will implement 10% of our van fleet with chains, and that should be enough to cover our overnight service, which is more problematic usually than daytime service, and our medical necessity trips, which is a large reduction compared to what we normally operate. Next slide. Okay, on the operations side, some of the improvements that we're planning to implement is we're going to develop a paratransit-specific storm action plan. And what that basically is when we get snows of more than 6 inches or other adverse traveling conditions such as freezing rain or heavy winds, we will look to curtail service where we can and suspend service where it's prudent to do so. In fact, we have already
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that whosever idea it was to separate out the paratransit service initiatives. That was a good thought, because it is, as you said, they are fragile and it's a very sensitive issue that stands alone. Are there any objections to conclude this meeting? A second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, thanks.
Have a good 4th of July.